Okay, thanks everyone for joining for the discussion about a Vault integration with Rails app. I have the agenda open for the purpose of the recordings. Sid, do you want me to share my screen as well, or can we see?
Up to you, or you can read it.
Okay, I'll just I'll just read through it real quick. So what we wanted to do for the context of this meeting, related to the epic for variable and secrets management in GitLab CI/CD, we have an issue for the Vault integration with the key value secrets MVC. And originally, and the purpose of that issue is to allow companies already using Vault to set up Vault stored variables from within GitLab, which then can be used as part of the CI platform. So those secrets can be retrieved for running jobs. And the original proposal for this MVC was to implement it using Runner to fetch the tokens that are stored in Vault. But right now we're looking at an alternative approach of exploring doing that integration with the Rails app instead of Runner. We have a POC that is in the works now in the current milestone. And this meeting is just to talk through some of Sid's thoughts on why it would be better to pursue a Rails integration with Vault instead of Runner, and in fact, not even pursue the integration with Runner as an option. So thank you, Sid, for joining and giving us some of your thoughts.
So being open to that.
I'm sorry?
Thanks for being open to that and organizing it.
Yes. So I'm assuming that you have some other reasons why you're thinking that the integration with Runner should probably be scrapped completely. I don't know if you want to start with that, or I have that actually listed in the agenda as item number 3.
Yeah, so what integration do we have currently in the Runner?
I didn't check with Darren actually. You mean with just in general with other or with Vault specifically?
With Vault specifically?
I
don't think we have one.
Yeah.
No, we don't have one. So this is not about scrapping anything. There's nothing we ship. There's nothing customers are using. So I see Vault as another data store. So we have a database for some of our data. Some of our data we store in Gitly, like the Git data. We have search in Elasticsearch, or indexes in Elasticsearch. We have Redis for more ephemeral data. And then Vault we should use for secrets, because it's starting to become the standard for that. And I think anytime you have a secret, you should be able to rotate it. It's no longer you have a secret and you assume it's always going to be safe. I think you should operate from the assumption at some point you're going to have a breach and they're going to find out all your secrets, and you should be able to get back in a state where they're secrets again. So Vault is really good for that, for doing the rotation. It's also good for doing kind of access control. Like we now have a lot of data in GitLab that is super sensitive, like credentials to customers' Kubernetes clusters and everything else. If we separate that into Vault, we can better secure that. For example, we can rate limit. Like if we're going to rate limit our Rails app calls to the database, like that's an enormous amount of traffic. That's really hard to see, to spot patterns there and everything else. If we just have the secrets in Vault, it's a much more limited set of traffic. Also, Vault has way less surface area than like our Rails app or our database. It's way less. It's complex to run, but the surface area is smaller, and there's a lot of reviews that it underwent. A lot of people are paying attention to that. So I think we should use Vault as a backend for any secret we have in GitLab. And then the runner should be very simple. And the runner should just tell what Rails tells it to. That's already the process. Like if we have a CI job, Rails determines, okay, how's the CI job going to work? It fetches in any other scripts that you're referring and everything else. It is aware of everything. All the logic is in the Rails app. And then it's sends off to the runner, just, okay, run the script. So I think we should stick with that design, keeping the complexity in the Rails app. So the Rails app interfaces with the user. It can say, hey, this is not there, this is not there. Ruby is great for all that complexity. And then the runner should be something simple that can live on many platforms. We're still struggling, for example, to port it to IBM Z series and things like that. The last thing we want is the runner to have more dependencies and more complexity.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Was there more that you were?
No.
When you mentioned that it would be better to have a scenario where the tokens from the secrets are rotated. When I hear the word rotated, I think of a finite number of tokens, for example, and then it gets reused later in a rotation. Or are you really thinking of something that is short-lived and expires and really is replaced by something entirely and it does not get reused?
Latter. So, for example, right now we ask customers to give us Kubernetes secrets, and then we send some of those secrets to the runner to do its thing. Or maybe I'm exaggerating a bit. I would love for the Kubernetes secrets not to live in our database encrypted, but to live in Vault. You can never get those secrets out of Vault. The only thing Vault can do is go into your cluster, generate a temporary credential, hand that back to Rails and our runner to do its thing. But suppose someone breaches our Rails app, which is not unheard of, like luckily until now, there's never been a hack out in the wild, but we have responsible disclosures of people that did an RCE against our Rails app. Right now, that person would be, it would be possible for anybody who attached a cluster, Kubernetes cluster, to GitLab.com to get all those credentials. That is a liability we don't want. Also, so there's two things that make it better. Like Vault will never give those credentials out again. Also, it will supply short-lived credentials. So if someone breaches, I don't know, a runner or something else, they will only have a short-lived credential. Mm-hmm. And that's not unheard of. Like, for example, we don't reuse the runners, but a customer might. So there might be another job running on it, and that might be a bad actor or something else. So Vault is not so much about like 10 codes that you reuse, like you have for two-factor auth, although there you can't reuse it. It's about never again giving away that master secret that allows you to create a short-lived credential.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. I just wanted to make sure I understood or didn't misunderstand the word rotate. Okay.
Cool.
So then, let's see. So the other question I had on here is, so I was reading through some of the issues that predated me joining GitLab and trying to understand if Vault becomes our data store for secrets.
Let's call it a secret store. Yep.
Sorry. Yes. What this would mean for GitLab as far as discontinuing the encryption and storing of secrets ourselves. Would this mean that would be, I mean, I guess maybe we're not far along enough to make a decision. It'd be one instance of Vault or multiple instances. I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's super tough. I'm not sure that Vault can scale to the scale we would need at GitLab. And at GitLab, we're talking about 1 million users that have like 10 secret each. That's 10 million secrets. I've tried to look around for what the limits of Vault are. I think it's based on etcd or something like that. And I think 10 million secrets is kind of a stretch for that, especially like it's much more about how frequently they get updated. So I'm not sure, but I think that's where we want to go. I think at some point we should also let the customer bring their own Vault store. But I think starting there tends to be a much harder user experience. So I think we'd first go for like Vault. The Vault with GitLab should just work really well. Duff is in this conversation, in this meeting. I'm having the same conversation about him, about internal and external Prometheus servers. The external stuff is just really hard and slows development down a lot. So we should do that later. Like it's an extended feature, like, oh, you want to use your own XYZ. Okay, we can add that if there's customer demand. From the start, we should just make sure that we have something integrated that ships by default that works well.
Okay, so that's good to know that there's no assumption it would be one instance, just so that I can make sure I include that detail for when the CI team works on the Rails app integration with Vault.
Sorry, there's no intention to make one instance. What did you say?
Like there's no intent to, or there's no assumption that there would be one instance of Vault for all of, for example, GitLab's secrets that we would migrate.
That's kind of what I said, that there would be one instance. Or
and there's an issue. Sorry, Sid, I don't mean to keep interrupting. My AirPods keep cutting out. I linked an issue, Tao, to this agenda for that concept that there's going to be one instance of Vault to support. And we're currently talking to HashiCorp about some of the things that Sid brought up. Are there limitations of how many secrets you can contain? What would be the viable path to promote to the enterprise instance of Vault if a customer wants to do that? There's just some other considerations to think about for an individual user where it might limit our reach if we were to say you have to use this one instance.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Sid. I thought you were saying us not knowing what the limitations are and whether or not it can scale to what we need, that we wouldn't assume that that's viable.
Okay, no, I'm not assuming anything, but one instance, like one instance, multiple instance. One instance, I create an account on GitLab, I push an app, everything happens. Multiple instances, I create an account on GitLab, I push an app. Can you please install your own Vault service? Like that is super, super hard. Or the alternative is we automatically run a Vault service for you, but now we're running 1 million Vault services, which seems dreadful to me and expensive. So yeah, it would have to be one Vault instance for GitLab.com by default. And at some point, people are going to want to bring your own Vault service. I think that should be a secondary thing after we make sure that this is working well and a great user experience.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me see. Oh, I had a side thought as far as taking it a step further as far as dog fooding is once we have a UI for managing the Vault credentials, or actually the secret stored in Vault, could it potentially replace our current use of 1Password as our password manager or our team members?
So GitLab is an OAuth provider already, which means you can log into other apps through GitLab. Mm-hmm. You could think about like extending that further, like making SAML integrations. But what you're then doing is kind of building our own Okta. And that's something in the scope of the product. If you look on the direction page, we explicitly said we're not doing that. If you're going to become kind of a single sign-on solution, the name of the game is supporting many, many applications. So you have to support thousands of different applications you can log into. I don't think that's our game. In fact, compared to other DevOps solutions, we do integrate, but we have a bit fewer because most of the time you're just using GitLab for everything, which makes our life easier. And this would not even be supporting other DevOps solutions. This would be supporting any application in the world. I think that's a completely different company. So gotcha. I don't think it makes sense, but I'm open to using GitLab for more stuff. So I'm not saying no, but That will be my response. Don't do what I say, do what you want to do.
And then the last question I have, actually, we might have already talked about it. I was at the beginning, I was going off of a comment in your Slack message that you wouldn't necessarily pursue the integration through Runner, but we talked about that at the beginning. Oh, and Jackie just moved it. I didn't have any other questions for you, Sid. I didn't know if Jackie, you did at all?
Well, some immediate thoughts. Before this call, I was talking a little bit with Alliance, and I wanted to get your thoughts, Sid, on if you feel like there's other ways to provide more prescriptive best practices for customers rather than just providing like an ironclad built-in UI GitLab secrets management offering. So, for example, providing rich documentation on how to best use GitLab with Vault, or building out more compelling go-to-market scenarios that we can show this is where you use Vault well, rather than focusing on waiting till we build a robust integration.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like the building better docs is frequently much quicker than building actual functionality. So, and through building the docs, you learn things, you get feedback, you help customers. So if you're talking about iteration, that makes sense to me. Like, so I'm supportive of that.
Okay. I'm worried about discoverability in general. And as I release new features and consider the introduction of more features to GitLab, I'm hesitant to just wait for features to be available and not create more of a narrative. And I think there's also risk with Vault not leveraging their partnership a little bit better and creating more of a splash in the market. So that's good to hear that you feel like that's a safe iteration.
What I wonder about is I can see this happening for GitLab.com, where you have Vault, and we managed to scale it to like 1 million users and everything else. What I'm worried about is self-hosted. So most of those are on Omnibus. Vault is notoriously hard to set up. I think it requires a cluster and etcd by default. I'm not sure whether you can run it as a single server. I assume you can, but then it's relatively hard to make backups and you run the risk of losing your cluster. So shipping Vault with Omnibus is something we should look into. Like, is that relatively easy to do? And then we can simplify it. Like, it needs to be more secure than what we're doing today, encrypted database. I think but it doesn't need to be like the multiple Vault instances, super deluxe installation as well. We should document what our security assumptions are and everything else, but it might be a single Vault server, and it might be part of our regular backup process where you have unencrypted secrets in your backup process, which are clearly documented and everything else. But that'd be something to look into.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I think there's already an issue with Omnibus. Is that right?
Yeah, I just dropped it in there. I actually kind of reframed that issue once I took over this release management side. We have to do a little bit more research, most around what Sid was saying, which is for self-managed instances. How is that experience setting up Vault? And is this something that we can support without being taxing on our performance? What does that look like? And then, of course, once people start using Vault, if they choose to then upgrade to enterprise, how do we support that longer term?
Yeah. I think that the bigger picture is secret management used to be about making sure people didn't find them out. We're now learning that that's super hard. Like, it's super hard never to push a secret in your repository or have it end up on this somewhere. It's almost impossible. It ends up in the logs. They radiate everywhere. So the new thing is, like, instead of assuming it never gets breached, you want a button where you push that button and all the secrets in your company are updated. So 1 minute after pushing that button, no secret is the same anymore. That is what Vault is bringing. And right now, Vault is very popular. It's getting a lot of customers, but I believe those customers to be the most sophisticated in the world. We're talking about the big internet companies, big banks but it's super hard to they do it for their most essential applications, but doing it across the company is really hard. Doing it for all companies is even harder. So that's where we can add value as GitLab, where by default you work like that. You never have another secret that can be rotated. Every secret is able to be rotated. So you can always push that button, rotate all your secrets. That's the future we're working towards, and we should make that future easier for our users to adopt.
By the way, Sid, I'm glad you mentioned that we should solve for the smallest iteration of supporting Vault as part of a GitLab offering, as opposed to starting off with or doing that before supporting users with their own Vault instances, because the issue that I mentioned in the context of the agenda, that MVC issue was actually just trying to solve for both. And now I know I need to split those out into completely different issues.
Yeah, I think so. We have the same situation with Dove, with metrics, and turns out supporting someone else's thing just it's that death by 1,000 cuts. It just makes it harder. There's all kinds of things you can't do and don't control. So let's
have 3 more minutes.
Thanks, Dove. Let's first do the easy thing, which is hard enough to get Vault to all our users.
Okay. That's all I have for today. Jackie, do you have anything else?
We'll just need to sync offline on bring your own Vault versus not. We'll need to confirm what that does to sales and bookings, if they're assuming certain perspectives on what we support in our secrets management solution.
Yeah, I think there were some customers that were the for that issue for solving for both.
And that renewal might matter more than supporting new customers starting with a brand new instance. So we'll need to balance that from a business case perspective. Yeah. But other than that, we're all good.
But I agree, Jackie, that might be a very good reason to do that. And also by that, if that's a short, hopefully there we're talking about a more limited set of functionality, and then you learn from that. So that makes sense. Cool.
Okay. Well, Sid, thank you so much. This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you too.